couple of years ago, Rod and I created the business called Capricorn Gems, and Capricorn Gems has been, I guess, busy in the last few years sourcing, cutting and marketing and promoting Central Queensland Sapphires. Rod's got an extensive history in the sapphire industry, in fact the gemstone industry in Central Queensland, and I guess my skills are more in the marketing and promotion of our gemstones. So what we thought we'd do today is to talk very broadly about the final product, the gemstones. And we've got a tray here on the table, and we'll come down a little bit later closer to this tray and have a look at these gems. But what I thought, Rod, we'd talk about is the characteristics of the gemstone and the sort of particularities that identify Central Queensland gemstones, and how you can pretty well tell whether they originate in Central Queensland or whether you've got a good idea they might originate in Central Queensland, and the particular features of the stone. So, Rod, I thought we'd start with that, having a look at the gems, and talking a little bit broadly about the sapphires.
Yeah. Okay then, Ian. What most people don't understand is that sapphires are a very complex stone. Okay, many of the other gemstones, very simple in their nature, their properties, the way you have to cut them. Sapphires, very, very complex. And a lot depends on their formation. And there are two ways that sapphires are formed. One is under a volcanic type environment, which Central Queensland is, and metamorphic, which is a much more gentle process where you've got the material that will form the sapphires, then heated from all around by geological processes, like Sri Lanka.
Right.
Very different nature stones. So you can use those characteristics to often identify the Central Queensland stone.
So generally speaking, Rod, can you look at a sapphire and pretty well tell where it's from around the world, or is it sort of from particular, or could be from particular areas, or how do you actually determine that?
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, take a sapphire, take a blue sapphire. Just at first glance, it may be from a number of sources. So you can't just eyeball it and say it's from there, unless it has a particular characteristic unique to that area.
I see.
Right? A blue sapphire could be from one of a dozen different sources.
No.
But once you go into the gemological aspect of it, then you can start pinning them down.
I see. And that's where the gemological studies,
Yes. Very
circumstances come in to actually investigate the particular gem to enable to determine where it's from.
Absolutely. Now, even within Central Queensland gemfields, Anarchy, Ruby Vale Sapphire region, there are dozens of different forms of sapphire even within the Central Queensland gemfields.
Interesting.
So a stone from Reward is different to the one from the Scrub Leaf, which is different to the Rush, is different to the Bluebird. Size, colour, characteristics, all different. Their behaviour, when you're cutting them, when you look at them. So even within a small gem area, well, it's not that small, but even within that area, there are different formations with that.
So Rod, can we talk a little bit about what we have on the tray here? Now I know we can't see them on the screen necessarily, but if you look at we'll come back to these shortly, but a bit closer up, but if you talk about our Central Queensland gemstones, what are some of the distinguishing characteristics that you would attribute to these particular stones, compared to perhaps other sapphires from around the world?
One of the characteristics of the Central Queensland material is the bicoloration can be very distinctive.
Right.
Okay, so some of our party colours are much more vivid in the demarcation of the colour, say the yellow and the blue. Other areas may have them, but it's a much more subtle colour change from one to from blue to yellow.
The colour particularly, Rod, does the colour indicate potentially where it comes from, or like in this case we've got a range of colours here, but can we sort of say that a particular colour is more likely to occur at a particular
Not really, because it depends on that formation. If it's the
okay.
volcanic or igneous type formation, you can have the similar characteristics from a different location in the world.
Right.
Now, an area in Vietnam has some sapphires of a similar nature to the Central Queensland ones. If you go to Sri Lanka, totally different. Go to Africa, totally different. Right? So it depends on its original method of formation.
Okay. Well, let's now then have a look at maybe a little bit more detail on what we have on the tray.
Okay.
Yeah. Rod, Capricorn Gems as a business has recently put a lot of time and effort into getting our gems online for sale, and we have quite an extensive website shops now, and pretty well every gem actually gets to that website. So these particular gems in this tray will eventually end up on that website, and on the tray here in front of us we've got a great selection of our material, quite a range of different cut types, and of course quite a range of different colour systems within that cut type. So on the website we have them all listed underneath their cut type, and then the full details of each particular gem, the dimensions and the weight, and a range of photographs and some video to show off the stone. And we're finding that very effective in our marketing and our promotion for our designer friends from all around the world. Actually, we've got clients and customers in the US, in the UK, across European countries, New Zealand, of course a number in Australia. So we've got quite an extensive client base, and we're always looking to grow that and to share our beautiful gemstones to the world market, Rod. So let's talk a little bit more about some of these here, Rod. Would you like to maybe select out one or two and then actually talk about the characteristics of the stone?
Okay, we'll do, Ian. Now, sadly, because of foreign influence, most people think of Australian sapphire as being black, blue. Right? Some of the opposing producers of sapphire have denigrated Australian stone to the promotion of their own material.
Yeah, we've heard that story, Rod.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a bit tragic, isn't it?
It's a tragic, because there are magnificent blue sapphires here in Central Queensland. One of the sad things is a lot of that material was actually shipped overseas in the rough, processed overseas, and then sold as their material, not Australian. Now, the website that you have created and the promotion we're doing is now highlighting the quality, the colours, the superb material that Central Queensland can produce. So we have beautiful blue stone. We have beautiful yellow. Some of the best yellow sapphires in the world come from Central Queensland. Yellows into the gold colours. We have uniform colours. We have the blue, we have the yellow, we can have green. And it's the nature. There are your three primary colours of sapphire. And it depends on the actual crystal of the sapphire, what you're going to get. Blue can be just uniform blue. If it's a blue crystal with a blue cross table, it will cut blue, uniform colour. The yellow, if it's yellow and yellow, you'll get that. Green. Now the fascinating thing about Central Queensland, sometimes you get the different colours will combine in one stone. And then we get something like this, that is a combination of the blue, the fine blue, and the fine yellow in one stone. The Australian party colour.
Party colour, Rod, P-A-R-T-I, isn't it?
That's it, party colour, simply because partition of two colours.
Right.
Yes.
That's the explanation.
That's it. So we have those.
And that makes them very unique, doesn't it, Rod, really? Because When you talk about a blue sapphire, because if you talk about blue sapphires, that's what really people recognise sapphire as being, is blue. And, you know, not too many of the public out there understand that you can pretty well get sapphire in every colour. But, of course, you know, the marketing machine over many decades has portrayed that sapphires predominantly is blue. But that's not the case, is it?
Not at all, but the word sapphire actually means blue, from the Greek, way back.
Exactly.
So it actually refers to the blue.
Blue corundum, I
It's
suppose.
blue corundum. Sapphire is blue corundum.
Right.
Yellow is golden yellow corundum. Green corundum. Sapphire. It chemically the same as ruby.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Ruby is a corundum, but has a little bit of chromium in there to make it red.
Right.
Okay.
So it's these small trace elements, I suppose, Rod, that actually colour the stone. Is that the case?
Absolutely. Aluminium oxide, the pure corundum, is colourless. But then you get a little bit of iron, a little bit of chromium, a little bit of titanium will then give you the different colours.
Right.
Tiny percentage of trace element, sure. So that's the nature and the colours of the stone. What we then have to do, or what I have to do, is then make the decision on how to cut the stones. Okay. Now sometimes the stone will tell you exactly how it wants to be cut. If it's a uniform colour, then the choice is simply what shape is the rough to get the best yield from your piece of rough,
Right.
and to display the colour most effectively. The party colours, these we have 2 or more colours, we then need to select a cut to highlight that feature,
Right.
and at the same time try and yield the best return from the rough.
Right. Okay, Rod. Well, look, that's great. Let's come back again to another clip and talk a little bit more about the actual cutting, the decision on how to cut the stone, and also let's talk a little bit about the value, I suppose, of the size of the stone and how that sort of is influenced by the nature of the gem. So here's the stones Rod had on the tray a moment ago, and again you can see the characteristics he was talking about: the blue, the yellow, the green, and then the party colour or the multicoloured gem. Rod, we've been talking about a lot of features here about Central Queensland Sapphires. We've been talking about how the colours form. We've been talking about the nature of the gemstone. We've been talking about the relative colour systems of our Central Queensland gems to other gems around the world. Let's now talk a little bit about the cutting decision and how you make that cutting decision from the rough, and how that also then relates back into the market as well, because there are features there in terms of what we have to be aware of in terms of what people require from the market. I mean, we know at the moment, Rod, that teal-coloured sapphires are very, very popular, and as you know, and you'll tell us a bit about this, I'm sure, that teal really isn't a colour in lots of ways, but they're very popular, and they're very, well, they're hard to get, really, aren't they? Because they're
Extremely at the moment, extremely hard.
We just can't meet the demand. But I mean, so let's talk a little bit about that. Let's talk a bit about the rough. Let's talk about how you make those decisions, and then we'll talk a little bit the value-price relationship.
Okay, with the rough, Ian, Central Queensland, because of its formation, it was a very violent type of forming the sapphires. Blasted up through lava tubes, and then so a lot of the Central Queensland material is small fragments of sapphire. Very rarely do you get it to grow into nice crystals. They're fragments, they're really rough and ragged. So trying to cut them, it's not an easy decision. You've got to try and study the stone. It's not only the colour, it's the orientation, it's any banding, it's the shape of the rough material too. first thing is try and get an idea of which way to cut it, just an idea, but then start knocking off all the little sharp corners and things that you have to get rid of first. If it's got a flaw, cut that out. So when I'm preforming, I don't make a decision to say, this will be a round stone. I will let the stone tell me what it's going to become. Okay. Now, a lot of material in Queensland is sort of a rectangular shape that suits emerald cuts and ovals.
Right.
Which is fortunate because the vast majority of the jewellery trade worldwide uses oval shaped stones, which is fortunate for us. Knock it down, let it tell me what it wants to be, and then you've got to think of the colour. If you've got a stone that has two different colours in it or graduation of colour, it's going to the end result will be determined by where you put those colours. If you put the dark part of a stone in the culet, the entire stone will be very dark. So if you can, you try and get the dark bit at the top and the lighter bit at the bottom will lighten the stone. Whether it's cut down on what we call the C-axis, the main table, or whether it's cut on the cross table, depends on shape, colour, all sorts of factors in combination. Now, I guess 50 years of experience makes it reasonably easy for me.
Right.
But for a beginner, it's a real problem.
So really, as a beginner, and just to diverge a touch, you really need a mentor really to help you through this process, Roy, wouldn't you, when you're talking about cutting these stones?
Absolutely.
You can't really just jump in and facet this sort of material.
No, because very rarely will the finished product be anything like what you think it might be, unless you've got a lot of knowledge, and you can make some fairly accurate predictions of what it will be like.
So Rod, tell us a little bit now about the size of the stones, how the size relates to the numbers, I guess. I mean, I suppose it's a little bit like that the analogy of the triangle, isn't it? Where you've got a whole lot of material at the bottom base of the triangle, smaller material, and of course as you rise up, it becomes very small numbers, if you like, at the top of the tree in terms of the size of the gem, but not just the size, but the quality of the gem as it reaches that top, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's like the diamond industry, like any gem industry. It's that, a huge amount of small material, and then decreasing amounts of larger material as you go up. Now, to cut 4 carat plus sapphire, it's not easy.
Just can't find it.
There's not much, or there's plenty of big bombs, but it's going to cut a big black stone, which is no use to anybody.
Yes.
But for the quality we're after, anything over 4 carat is becoming an exceptional stone.
So I suppose, Rob, again, at the end of the day, that's all got to do with, the probability of that gem lasting through the eons, the millennia, coming up through that volcanic eruption. I mean, just the simple journey of that piece of gemstone and not being cracked or broken or whatever over the millions and millions of years.
Absolutely, because we have fragments of sapphire comes out of the mining process where you might find just 2 of the angles of the hexagonal crystal. Now, some of those would have indicated that the original crystal could have been massive.
Well,
I mean, really no idea of how tall it might have been, but certainly that diameter. But because it came up under such a violent set of circumstances, been fractured, rapid cooling, exploded as it came up to the surface from 20 kilometres down. So you've got these little fragments and chips. Under a gentle set of circumstances, these crystals could have come out as huge crystal, and you could have been cutting 100 and 200 and 300 carat sapphires. Doesn't happen here. Yeah, there are some big ones, but they're just big corundum bombs.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, the probability of getting a pure gem, we've seen some, haven't we? Probability of finding them is very remote. I mean, we've seen some like 100 carat, maybe 90 odd carat beautiful crystal pieces, but they're one in a million.
Oh, absolutely.
It takes a lifetime of mining to actually find those pieces.
Well, I think in all the time that I was mining, The largest piece of gem type material I got was only 88 carats of the blue, right? Which is, you think 88 carat, that's huge, but it's not when you're thinking what it could be.
Yeah.
Right? So, you know, that's shifting a lot of dirt to find one of that size. But the average size is probably 6 to 7 carats in the rough. Anything over 7 carats is becoming a large piece of gem rough.
So just on that, that obviously, and just to talk about that in terms of the market and the pricing, and you will see that in our website. It's represented merely from the fact of price points for larger stones are always much higher per carat than what the smaller stones are, and particularly some of them, if they're particularly like a teal at the moment, the price per carat, or a very good blue, the price per carat is way up there relative to the price per carat for a smaller gem, based on those facts. That it's just the rarity of the gem.
Absolutely, and it pertains not only to sapphires but to all minerals. Just think of how expensive or how cheap iron ore is. $100 a tonne, right? Rare earth minerals, you know, they're thousands of dollars a kilogram.
Yeah.
Depends on the rarity. The same with our sapphires. Many small stones. So if you're talking 2 mil, 3 mil, huge quantities of that tiny material. So the price is going to be way down.
Yes.
But as I said, once you get over the 5, 6, 7, maybe 10 carat rough, there's not that much of it. It's a rarity factor is number one, and then the colour is so important.
Well, you'll certainly see that on our website. We have a whole range of cuts, of colours obviously, and the sizes within each of those cuts as well. And that's, you know, I think we've got literally hundreds of sapphires on the website now for sale, and you'll actually quickly understand that as you see the price points across the stones that we've got. Rod, I'd like to come back for the next clip and talk a little bit about the quality of the cutting. Can we do that?
We can do that, sure. Yeah.
Rod, I want to talk a little bit about the market, the marketing, and also our receptivity to the market in terms of types of cuts. Firstly, and then secondly, I want to talk a little bit about the quality of our material, because I think these are two pretty important features for us. We work directly with designers. We don't sell to the general public. We sell wholesale to the designer market, so that then designers can set these pieces and make beautiful jewellery for their clients. So Rod, we're very receptive to the market, and we're always acting on feedback from the market. So there's a couple of gems here on the tray actually that we've been experimenting with in the last short while. A couple of hex cuts there, you might just point them out for us, Rod. Those hex cuts there, yes, that's them. We've introduced these into the market in the last couple of months, and these have been very successful. Again, it's all about client demand. It's all about what people are telling us that they want cut, so we're very receptive towards that. And then we've got this other elongated hexagonal stone here that we've only just cut a few of those in the last week or two, and they've been very popular, and we think that they will continue to be popular going through. So I guess what I wanted to say in this case, Rod, is we're quite receptive to what the market wants, and we're always open to experimenting. And you're always doing this sort of stuff too with your faceting, because you're a long-time faceter. So tell us a little bit about what you've been doing with some of these yellows, mate, because you've been actually experimenting with some unique cuts on the backs of the yellows, haven't you?
Ian, the partnership we have is very successful. Pairing up two persons' knowledge. Okay. My knowledge of stone, the 50 years of working with sapphires, and then yours in the market aspect of it. The feedback and the flexibility that we have, because I source all the rough material. Not mining anymore. I mined in the past. now sourcing material from the miners I befriended 40 years ago. Right. The rough material. We're flexible in that I also cut. I do all the pre-forming, I make the decisions on what that stone will become. Okay. I have several cutters in Thailand who then do the finished process, but the little bit of flexibility is that I cut as well. The feedback from you, an inquiry for a hexagon, okay? Cut a nice little hexagon. Do that myself, put it on the market, see what the reaction is. We can then put a number of them into the manufacturing process. I pre-form them, we ship the goods up there, we'll get more of them back. An inquiry you mentioned just recently was this elongated hexagon. Okay. Someone has obviously seen it on the internet, or I would like one of them if possible. Cut one. This one I only finished it this morning, just brought it to you just before. Right. We will try several of those. If there's a market for them, then we will go put them into production in larger numbers. The cutting, very, very important. The standard profile, that is an emerald cut profile. Rectangular stone with the little corners cut off. There are many ways of cutting that will give a different effect to the finished gemstone. Mm-hmm. Some of them parallel facets, it will just be more colour and not so much brightness or sparkle and twinkle. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I have modified some of these cuts, particularly in the lighter one like this, that's not only beautiful colour, but then as you move the stone, you've got all these little twinkles and sparkles coming out of the stone. Mm-hmm. Yeah? So trying to maximise the appeal of the stone.
So that's really part of what your role has been, Rod, is to continue to experiment with these, and we'll continue to do that too as well, because there are literally thousands of different cuts, aren't they? And it really is a little bit like fashion, I suppose, in some respects, isn't it? Because it changes.
That's right.
You know, you get some people, or sometimes you get more of a demand of one particular style than the other.
Absolutely. Now, here is another rectangular one, emerald cut, and this one has the yellow and the green. Now, if you put the cut of this one, the uniform colour, onto that one, it would not be quite so distinctive, the two colours.
Right.
They would then start to blend together,
Right.
just from the refraction and reflection of the facets.
Yes.
So that one, you leave the very standard parallel emerald cut facets on it to highlight
Yes.
the two colours.
Yes. Rod, one of the things that we're pretty keen to do with our customer base, our designers, is to help them understand the gems as well. And it's videos like this that actually do that too. So we're more than happy to, and we do, assist wherever possible for designers to better understand our gemstones, to better understand the way we process, the way we cut, and the quality that we sell as well. So we're always very mindful of quality, and we have probably 3 stages of quality control, I suppose, in some ways. We've got the original cutter, and then we've got our support guy up in Thailand, Andrew, who helps us with that process. And so he's reviewing the cutting quality. They come here, you're reviewing the cutting quality, and really at the end of the day, I'm reviewing the cutting quality. So it's very rare for a gemstone to get through those 3 hands to hit the market, if you like, and to be questionable in terms of its quality. So what I'm trying to say here is we've got some processes in place that we think ensure that quality is kept to its maximum possible standard, I guess.
Absolutely, but it even goes right back to the point where I'm pre-forming the stones,
yep,
because I'm pre-forming with that in mind.
Yep.
Okay, get rid of any flaws, any blemishes, etc. Just end up with a pure piece of lovely stone as a preform.
So that's right, Rod, because really, in many cases, people don't preform the stones well enough, and then you end up with inclusions within the gem material that the cutter is starting with that maybe doesn't realise. So in some ways, in fact, there's many ways, this whole preform stage is a vital, important stage in the whole cutting of the stone.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, a couple aspects. Call it the world gem industry, the manufacturer, like in Thailand, thousands of cutters there. They are just taught to cut. Bap, 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 bap. Everything comes out exactly the same. It's a process. There's no decision made by the cutter as to the colour, the orientation. He just goes cut, 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 cut. The important part is the preformer. Now, once again, they're preforming for size. We are preforming for quality. I will sacrifice size to get the end result that I am hoping for.
Yeah.
Always. So whatever we do is only going to be the best for that piece of material.
And from my perspective, Rod, at the end of the day, when I'm talking to our clients, we really go by the numbers that are gems that are returned to us. And gee, I can count on one hand, if that even, the number of stones that have been returned because of being so-called substandard. They're very, very few and far between. And you know what, that applies also with the calibrated gems as well. I think we keep a very close eye on even stuff cut down to 2 millimetre to some extent, 2.5 millimetre. So, you know, I think our clients really come to appreciate the quality of the gems and also can very much, to their clients when they're making up pieces of jewellery, act with assurance that they're setting the best of the possible gemstones that they can.
Absolutely. The quality of the stone, the cutting has to be absolutely right. Because I'm a cutter, so if anything comes back and it's a little bit shallow, it goes back to be recut. You know the critical angles, everything. The cut's right, the quality's right. Just whatever we do is absolutely the best. Absolutely. Their clients, your clients, can be totally assured that it will be clean, free of flaws, and just beautifully cut, precisely cut. Beautiful stone, regardless of size.
Yep. Well, Rod, look, I think this last half hour or so we've covered some really important parts of our business. We've really drilled down on our sapphires, I think quite intricately, I suppose, and hopefully when people view this video, they'll get a clearer understanding of both our gems from Central Queensland, and particularly our business, and why we do what we do. So thanks very much, Rod. It's been great.
Okay, pleasure, Ed. And perhaps in the future we might even go deep into the technical aspects of the stones as a gemologist.
Absolutely, we can do a little bit about that. I think that's the next step, to show and talk about the particular gemological features of the gem.
Yeah, because when I graduated in, I think, 1978, the gems are a love. I love looking into them. You get the odd one with that little inclusion, just the characteristic of them is just fascinating. Okay, good, Ian.
Thanks, Rod.
Okay.